In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Nathalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Nathalie.
Shalom, dear friend. It's so wonderful to be able to be with you today. I have a wonderful guest today, and it's Sondra Oster Baras. Sondra, wonderful to be with you. You are not just somebody who comes, but we are also a friend, so this is wonderful. Sondra comes from America, first of all. I mean, she was born in America, born in Ohio, and now she makes Aliyah. She has a family. She has 5 children. She lives in Karnei Shomron, which is in Samaria, in the north of Jerusalem, in a beautiful place. I went to sleep over there a few years ago. This was wonderful to put my feet in a community. And Sondra, you are part of CFOIC. Could you tell us a bit of what is CFOIC and how it started and how it has developed? Because I'm sure that the people in the UK will be very interesting to know.
Okay, well, CFOIC stands for Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, and this is exactly what it is. It was an initiative by Christians who loved Israel, and it began after the Oslo Accords were signed, which we are now marking 20 years to that process, which purported to be a peace process, but as we all know, produced more terrorism than Israel had ever known before. Anyway, as a result of that process, Israel began handing pieces of land from Judea and Samaria to the Arabs. And this was a Christian initiative that understood not only the strategic problems with this kind of process, but also the biblical ramifications. And I happened to meet these people. This was back in 1995. I met this family from Colorado, and you know, they were very annoyed. At the time, I was working in a different organization that was representing the communities in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza to Jews. And really, we had very little awareness of this Christian Zionist population, what they were, who they were. So he came and he said, you know, there are a lot of Christians out there who would really like to hear more, to learn more about the communities in Judea and Samaria. We need to set up a Christian organization that focuses exclusively on the communities in Judea and Samaria. And I said, well, great, do it. You know, I'll help you, but I don't know anything about Christians, you know. So that's really how it started. For the first couple of years, it was just a small family project where we provided material, information, and they went to different churches and gave seminars and began to create a certain awareness of what the settlement movement is all about. And then in 1998, I opened the Israel Office, and from then we took it over. I've been doing this together with my Christian colleague in the United States, Kim Traub, and the two of us have really been running this organization for more than 15 years. She's representing the Christian part of the equation, Christian Friends, and I'm representing the Israeli communities part of the equation. I'm an Orthodox Jew. Many look at this relationship and say, what, Orthodox Jew, Christian, how does that go together? And it works beautifully.
Because we have something in common.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, of course, is something that we've both learned to recognize in all of the people that I've met over the years, Christians. When we first met years ago in England, you know, the idea that an Orthodox Jew can come to a Christian audience and explain how we are actually living out God's commandments and the fulfillment of prophecy. And that what we're doing, even though we really have ordinary lives like anyone else, we have children and families and jobs and our kids go to school and all the regular stuff, our essence is much more than that. We believe that just in our everyday lives, by living here in the land of Israel, and especially living in Judea and Samaria, we are taking part in the fulfillment of prophecy. And by sharing that vision with Christians all over the world, we are creating an amazing bond of people who are able to stand together on that issue and make a difference.
Very good. So when you speak about Samaria and Judea, people say also the mountain of Israel. Is it the same? Could you give us a bit
Well,
of
Judea and Samaria is part of the mountains of Israel. The mountains of Israel go further north and further south as well. But if you talk about the mountains of Israel, of course, the Bible section that comes to mind is Ezekiel 36. And in that chapter, Ezekiel addresses himself to the mountains of Israel, and he really recites one of the most beautiful prophecies of redemption and rebirth that are in the Bible. And he talks about a barren land that will again become populated. He's addressing the mountains of Israel, and he says, "Get ready, mountains of Israel, because my people Israel are about to come home." And then it talks about the animals coming back, and the people, and the ruined cities being rebuilt, and the trees shooting forth their branches. And when you look at the history of the settlement movement in Judea and Samaria, take that biblical verse, those biblical verses in hand, and then see that development, and it's all there. And I can personally attest, because I was in Israel as a student when I was 18 in Jerusalem. And during that year, the first community was established in Samaria. It's what became Kidumim. And it was actually a grassroots effort that it took a number of attempts until the government, which at that time was very hesitant about settling in Judea and Samaria, they realized that this became a very popular desire and approved it. So that happened in December of 1975. And in January of 1976, just a couple weeks later, the initial location of this community was in an army camp in Samaria. Getting to there was a whole story in and of itself. But anyway, I hitched a ride there with some friends and spent the weekend. And it was just such an amazing experience. And I have to tell you, at that time, when you looked around you, you really, all you saw was barren hills. You know, people talk about we came to settle in an area where it's full of Arabs. It was not full of Arabs. Where that area was, there was here a tiny little village, and there a tiny little village. And more than anything else were barren rocky mountains, no trees. We woke up in the morning, no birds, because if there are no trees, there are no birds. It was, you know, and you come back to that same place today, and literally you see, what is that, the tree shooting forth its branches? There were no trees, there were tree stumps. And the trees grew, and we planted new trees, and now you can see flowers and fruit trees, and unbelievable.
I know, a bit like Tekoa.
Yes.
And even here where we lived 25 years ago, it was a barren hill too.
Absolutely.
And Bobby Brown was saying, no trees, no birds. You couldn't hear, and there was a lot of wind because the trees.
Because you have empty,
the wind.
right?
Yes,
You have empty mountains. And this is true of every story. Tekoa has its own story. Every community in Judea and Samaria has its own story. But what they all share is this rebuilding of what had been the barren mountains of Israel.
Wonderful. So how the Christians come into that, and how can they help? And how can they connect, and how can they learn?
Okay.
Because education is so important.
Right. So first and foremost, we're about education. And I personally travel all over the world. And speaking to Christian groups, to churches, to Sunday schools, to fellowships, you know, groups all over the world.
Mostly in America? Or tell us a bit the countries where you
I'm
go.
in the United States a lot. I go to the United States about 3 times a year. I've also started to go to other countries in Asia. I've been in Australia, Singapore. I'm going to the Philippines, although, you know, now with their bad storm, I hope it all still works out. But I am scheduled to be in the Philippines at the end of January. And Australia I've gone several times. I'm also in Europe. I go to England almost every year. And I've gone to Holland very often. And those are the 2 countries that I've been at. Of course, I'm open to invitations from whatever country. I do only speak English, though, and Hebrew. So
they can find translators.
Yes, that's what I do in Holland. Every time I speak, we're translated into Dutch. So that's really a main thing where I'm speaking, and we have also tour groups that are coming to Israel that contact us and ask us to arrange a program for them. And that program is never just get on a bus, take a look at some site, say, here, this happened, and move on. For us, a program is an integral part of the learning experience. It is walking in the places where biblical events happened, and then visiting the community next door and meeting the people who are living there because of the biblical significance of the place. And putting that all together, you come out with this understanding that the Bible may have been written thousands of years ago, but it's a book that is alive and well today, not just because we read it, but because the Bible itself is happening today. Things are taking place that, 1,000 years ago, even 2,000 years ago, nobody would have dreamed that this would really happen. And look at this. And it's exactly what the Bible laid out. And that is our educational mission. In addition, we enable Christians to support the people in biblical Israel. So we have, first of all, we have Christians, of course, supporting our educational work, which in and of itself is a very, very important project. But we also have projects that are submitted to us from communities, whether it be emergency and security equipment, facilities for teenagers, for youth, for children, for senior citizens, educational facilities. We do a lot of special education programs, handicapped children, children with all kinds of special needs. We are funding a lot of programs of that kind. And we even funding some Bible classes and Bible study. So we have the whole gamut, and Christians are invited to personally take part by financially supporting these projects.
Very good. This is wonderful. Now, what's happened? I mean, when you think how was Samaria and Judea and how it's expanding, tell us a bit how many people now live in Judea and Samaria. And I read some reports that is the place where there is more and more. I mean, the birth rate is the highest in all Israel, which is a great news.
Right. And we do have a very high birth rate. We have now 360,000 Jews living in Judea and Samaria and growing. And that number, by the way, does not include the parts of Jerusalem that were also liberated in Israel's 67 war. So here where we are in the outskirts of Jerusalem, that's not part of that number. So if you take in addition, all those communities on the outskirts of Jerusalem, we're coming to more than 700,000 people. So when you listen to the Palestinians or many of the Europeans and sometimes the Americans saying, we have to dismantle the settlements, we have to return to the 67 lines, well, that is what they're talking about. At least 700,000 people that they want to just say, leave your homes out. I think if any country would suggest that to any other country, they would be labeled racist. But here,
doing apartheid.
Exactly, that's apartheid, right? It's crazy. But anyway, that's really we are growing though, and that's the good thing. I have to tell you, I had a conversation with a neighbor the other day. Came by to pick something up, and it was a very windy day yesterday, if you recall. And I was noticing that I had some papers on the table, and they had blown onto the floor. And I was commenting. So my neighbor says, "Oh, that is nothing." He says, "We have so much building and construction going on now opposite our window that every single day we have to clean the whole house because it's blowing in dust and dirt." And then all of a sudden we both said, "Whoa, but at least we're building."
No.
And that's an amazing thing. So now we really are building.
This is interesting when you say that, because where we're living in Mevaseret, opposite us the same. They were like building for a year, and we were there. And the dust was so quite, every day. And I was like, and I felt the Lord saying, no, there is a passage in the Bible where it says you should even love the dust of the land. I can't remember the exact.
You have to find that for me.
Yes.
That's a good one. We're going to need that one.
Yes. And I was like, yes, I love your dust. And because it's the Holy Land.
What it means. And also what it means.
And it is true, yes. It's people are building and coming back.
Right.
And the families are growing and are being established, and there is the grandparents and you can see the generation now. This is just amazing. We have the biggest miracle in front of our eyes, of believing that the Bible is true, and so many people are denying it. It's quite.
Well, they have blinders on.
Yeah.
I always say one of the best proofs of the validity of the Bible is the continued existence of the nation of Israel and the return to the land of Israel. First of all, it's the biggest miracle of all time. And the miracle is not just that we came back to the land of Israel and became independent again, but the fact that for 2,000 years we were exiled from our land and didn't assimilate away. The fact that there was a nation to return. That's an amazing miracle.
You were speaking about my kids who don't speak French, one generation. And you revived, the Hebrew language have been revived, and this is just amazing to see.
Right. Although, that's one thing that I like to point out, The Hebrew language was never dead.
Yeah, they always kept it for praying.
It was for prayer and for study.
Yes.
And if you look at,
sure.
there is thousands of years of manuscripts of rabbinical responsa, all in Hebrew.
Sure.
The thing was, it wasn't an everyday spoken language, but it was a scholarly language.
They didn't have the bicycle and the radio.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And they didn't have the word for electricity.
Yes, you're right.
Do you know how they took the word for electricity?
Chashmal. No, tell me.
You know where chashmal appears?
No.
In Ezekiel.
All right.
Yeah.
No.
You know when Ezekiel has that vision, first chapter of Ezekiel?
Yes.
And one of the words to describe the it's thought of to be something like lightning or something. But it's a unique word because it's not the word for lightning. It's this unusual word, chashmal. And that's how they took the word for electricity. They went back to the Bible.
Eliezer ben Yehuda was an amazing man.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's like, he was really...
Well, he would walk around and yelling at everybody, speak Hebrew, speak Hebrew.
He would. Now, do you want to speak a bit about the Levi report? Because maybe not a lot of people have heard about it. And I know it's coming a bit in the news, and I think it's something important.
Well, it's very important. What happened was, for many, many years, in my opinion, Israel made a huge mistake in that they were not forthright enough in asserting the legal claim to Judea and Samaria. We have asserted the biblical claim for a long time. And as far as the legal claim, the Supreme Court actually discussed this, Supreme Court of Israel discussed this many years ago when the first settlements began, and the Supreme Court of Israel determined that it was indeed legal. And then it was that was never used in explaining to public opinion what is happening. So Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his last term, created a commission headed by former Supreme Court Judge Edmund Levy, and asked them to fully research the legal issues under international law.
Okay, so this is Netanyahu who asked.
Netanyahu commissioned the report. They sat, they studied, include some, in addition to the Supreme Court Justice, included someone by the name of Alan Baker, who I believe is originally American or Canadian or something, also considered a foremost expert in international law. And a number of other jurists, and they came together and they created this report, which they released about a year ago. And that report came down very, very clearly that, number one, Israel has the superior claim to the area of Judea and Samaria, that settlement in this area is perfectly consistent with international law, and in addition, a whole series of other issues that had to do with better ways for developing the land from a legal point of view, to simplify procedures and things of that nature. What happened then, as soon as that report was submitted, of course, the international media went crazy, international leadership, political leadership went crazy, and as a result, basically Netanyahu said, okay, we will put this aside for a moment, we will discuss it at a later opportunity. And basically what he was saying was, this is a hot potato, we don't want to touch it right now. But the report is out, and the report is there. I personally think that this is a report that needs to become the basis for Israeli government policy. I'm not sure that this is something that has to be declared, but it just has to be the government policy.
I mean, it's your country. There is certain thing that you have to do for the benefit of your country.
But in this case, it's not Israeli law that they're looking at. They're looking at international law. So even under international law, see, one of the main issues here, and this is something that's very important to realize, the discussion in the media, the assumption is that this is Palestinian land, that Israel has illegally occupied, and it's a question of when will Israel give it back to the Palestinians, because of course it's theirs.
But this is propaganda.
Yes, of course it's propaganda, but he has been accepted as the basis of discussion by international leaders, by everybody. And when you come and present a different point of view, you're considered to be ignorant, naive, whatever.
Or extreme.
Or extreme. Right. So here we have someone who's an international legal approach. And basically what they're saying, that there was never a claim to this land on behalf of the Palestinians. And in fact, the only time that there could have been a basis for an Arab claim to this land was at the conclusion of World War I, when the Balfour Declaration declared this land to be, excuse me, I'll back up. In the end of World War I, the Balfour Declaration declared all the land to be Israel. That was the claim of Israel. At the point at which the Arabs could have changed that was in 1947. Because in 1947, just before the State of Israel was established, the United Nations then decided, okay, despite what the Balfour Declaration said, despite what the mandate for Palestine said, which from the beginning was supposed to have all of Palestine be for a Jewish homeland, despite all that, the United Nations says, okay, we'll compromise. We're going to divide the land. And they divided it in a very unfair way to the Jewish people. They said, here will be an Arab state. Nobody said Palestinian state, by the way. Here will be an Arab state. Here will be a Jewish state. Israel accepted that.
Which was with the Jordan.
No, Jordan wasn't part of this at all. Had nothing to do with Jordan.
Sorry, with the Jordan River. Was it that separation? The map?
No, that's afterwards.
Okay.
In 1947, the partition plan was all talking about Western Eretz Israel, the part of the land of Israel that's west of the Jordan River. Jordan was already a state. Okay. That was a different problem. That problem began
No, sorry, I was speaking about the river.
Oh, the Jordan River, we're talking from the Jordan River and west. Okay. That partition plan enabled, gave the opportunity for the Arabs to have a state in most of Israel as we know it today. Much more than just Judea and Samaria. All places, lots of places. And Israel, the Jewish community, was against the plan because it took away from us some of the key places that belonged to the Jewish people. But despite that, we agreed. Why? Because we said, better to compromise, have something, have peace. And if we're living in peace with our Arab neighbors, so we'll go back and forth, it doesn't really matter so much. We accepted it right away. The Arabs rejected it. Now, had the Arabs accepted that, they would have a leg to stand on. They would say, okay, there's an international law that said, okay, what happened? They rejected it. So they have no claim.
Which was the same with when Arafat and Barak, when he was giving him almost everything.
That's right.
And
he walked out. He walked out. Every time the Arabs, throughout the last 150 years, have had the opportunity to have something in their hand, they walked away. So they really don't, they have just really, in my opinion, abdicated any potential claim they may have once had.
Sure. And now, what about the future for CFOIC?
Well, we're doing well, thank God. And this is something that really I have to thank our Christian supporters all over the world. More and more people are joining us, are supporting our work, are coming to visit with us, and are helping us spread the message for more and more people. And that really, though, is my message to our friends in England today. We need your help. We need your help to spread this message on to more and more people. Join our mailing list. Get other people to join our mailing list so that you can be educated as to what's happening. And anybody who can support what we're doing, the more funds we have, the more we can do.
Sure. This is just wonderful. And how is the relationship? I mean, I know there is Christian who are helping, but also I know that you are doing also some teaching. So how is it going? You are doing about the Bible for Christians to understand. I think this is also very important for us to be educated also in that way.
Well, this is something I never would have dreamed of.
I know, I remember you did not want to do it when we met.
Yeah,
and after I saw that you were doing it.
Why would a Christian want to learn Bible from a Jew? It didn't make sense to me. But people were asking for it. What happened was, from the beginning, whenever I educate about Judea and Samaria, I'm also always putting in a biblical teaching because that's part of the issue. Sure. And more people were asking for it. So now we have a regular weekly small Bible teaching that I put out every Friday on the portion of the week. That takes us through the 5 books of Moses, and then we start again at the beginning of every year. And the year begins always in the fall. I know it's not the same as your New Year. The Jewish New Year begins in the fall. And then since then, I put out a 5 DVD series called The Choosing of a Chosen People, where it's 5 half-hour Bible studies through the book of Genesis on that subject, how God made his choices very clear to get to the nation of Israel. And now we're working on all kinds of other things that
This is wonderful.
there's new initiatives coming
Good,
up.
good. And so how is it taken by the Christian? Are they asking for more?
They want
Like
it.
you
Yeah,
said?
that's otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. It's
Good.
crazy.
Good.
But that's what's happening.
I know. I think it's not crazy because I know God has put something in us also. Like we started in 1997 as a family, and it's like, okay, we have some Jewish roots. The Bible is Jewish. And so God started step by step to show us things. So I'm not surprised that you are, doing these things, and we can see that there is more and more people who are hungry. It's like God is
I have to tell
doing
you the
something.
funniest story. Yesterday, it was, I don't know, 3 o'clock something in the afternoon here.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a call from Kim, director of our U.S. office, who's in Colorado. So this is like, I don't know, middle of the night there for her or something. It was crazy early in the morning. She calls me, what's going on? Why are you up so early? She goes, I'm reading my Bible, and I have a question. And this is, she calls me about, and she's reading this verse, and she says, I don't understand. I don't even remember what the question was, but it was this question on reading the Bible, and how do I read this? And so I opened up the Bible, and I told her, how we see it and how it connects with this verse and that verse and the other verse and all kinds of stuff. And she was going, oh, good. Now that makes sense. Goodbye. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. It's amazing.
This is wonderful. I think we've been living also in the land here. We've learned so many things with our Jewish friends, and our faith is so much stronger. And it's what we want to do, with the people and bring to you over there in the UK, and I know you are also in America, and this is just wonderful. Sandra, thank you again for coming and giving us, what you are doing here in the land and linking Christian and Jews together. And we're here to help you. So don't forget, we are living in the last days.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Nathalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.